Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be connecting our Bellcrank assembly up to our wing rib. So here's what the finished product is going to look like. This is the right wing rib, number 9. You can see that the Bellcrank here is attached. Obviously this hasn't been up drilled or anything like that. This is just assembled, ready to drill. So on the one side, on the inboard side of the wing, here's my Bellcrank. So basically when I move the stick side to side, left and right, it's going to push on a rod that will move this back and forth like this, in and out, which is in turn going to be connected right here to a rod that comes back to my aileron, which will move my aileron up and down. Probably the hardest part of this assembly was getting everything lined up properly. The main part that you use for measurement are these holes that are already pre-drilled in your Bellcrank assembly. The channels, they are attached down through here, and you'll see that this cleco is connected right into here. There's another cleco on the other side down here, and one over here and here. They're all pre-drilled, so essentially this part right here, you can see it's got pre-drilled holes there. That'll go down inside of this, and the holes in the Bellcrank assembly here match up to these two holes right here and right here. The hard part is that you'll see over here on this wing rib that there are no holes, and so I've got to figure out the right spots to drill the holes, which I did over here already on the right one. The left one I have not done yet, so that's what we're going to do today. One thing you'll notice that's a little bit different between these two, these wing ribs are exactly the same part. They both have the flanges here on both sides that they look identical, left and right. That's the case for all of these ribs, left and right on the airplane. Most of these are the SNX-W16-06 part. So that being said, obviously we're going to have this Bellcrank assembly here on the right is going to be on the inboard side, and that's going to be on the inside of these bends here. Whereas on the left side wing, it's going to be the opposite. The Bellcrank is actually going to be on the outside of these bends. We talked about in the last video that the Bellcrank, these angles here are slightly more squat here than they are on this one, on the right one, and that's because this right one has to be able to clear the outside of these bends, whereas the left one does not. It's going to be kind of bolted here like this. These circles that are drilled into the rib here, there's 2 of them. I don't know if you're going to be able to see the one up here in the front. But these are centered on the wing cord, and that's where we make our reference line. It needs to be horizontal to this to start, and then our vertical channel that goes this direction needs to be perpendicular to that. So what I'm going to do first is draw this line just as a reference point, and then the next thing we're going to do is add these vertical channels here where they go, but they're going to be set perpendicular to that line. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take one of these angle clips. Basically it looks like a little 90-degree bend here with some holes drilled into it. One side's slightly longer than the other. If you look here, it's kind of shorter, and this is kind of a longer piece here. The longer end is what connects to the vertical channel here. Now one thing that's different between the right and left, again because there's some clearance issues with where the fold is in the rib here, this clip is actually not going to line up with the 4 holes that are drilled into this vertical part here. Instead, it's going to be offset by one of those holes. Rather than being something like this, it'll be something like this instead. And you can kind of see that here in the drawing. It's offset. You're only using 3 rivets instead of 4, which we did on the right one here. We use all 4 rivets on this one. Alright, so I made a mistake here without, luckily no damage done, but this actually needs to go against the rib, and obviously that's not going to do it with these bumped out, so I need to move those over 2 spots. that looks better. Alright, so the next thing that I need to do, now that I have this line drawn here, is figure out where this line is supposed to be, this vertical line. So I'm going to put this vertical channel here in place, and I'm bumping up this bottom corner as close up here to this as I can, just to get it as far forward as possible, because this bell crank is going to go on the other side of it, and it needs to be able to fit just right between those two lines as well. So what I'm going to do is line this up. I need to, again, make sure that this angle piece here is lined up as closely as I can to the bottom here and the top. So I'm going to line up this line with this piece of paper here. Make sure that it's square. And draw my line here just so I have a reference. And I'm also going to mark where these holes are going to go. Make sure again I'm getting this centered between the top and the bottom here as closely as I can so there's even distance between the two. And it's this spot right here and this spot right here. And I'm going to use that as my center mark here to draw a line up. Alright, and just in case we have anybody out there that doesn't know how to use a caliper, this is a high precision measuring tool. What I typically will do is, there's several ways you can measure with a caliper. You can do kind of an outside size of something, so I can go like this. It'd be a 0.125, which is 1/8 of an inch. I can also measure the distance between things using the back side of this, so I could measure right here, for example. And I can see that this is 0.262 inches. So going from the outside to the outside distance here, it gives me, we'll call that 2.78. So put in my calculator 2.78, and then I'm going to subtract, to find center to center, I'm just going to subtract the size of one of these holes. 0.0, well, we'll call it 0.1. Alright, so that gives us 2.68. And then what I need to do is just measure the distance between this line that we've already figured out is where we want to start, out to 2.68. Try to get that as close as possible to the right number here. And crank this down so it doesn't move. And the line that I've drawn here is correct. Right there. Still correct. And it's still correct. And it's still correct even down here. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do then is line up our parts here. We already know where these holes are, so that's good. On the other side, we're going to line up our holes again. So now that I've got this line drawn all the way from the top to the bottom, what I'm going to do is put the line right in the middle of my holes here. I need to make sure that top and bottom, these are lined up to where I want them. Right now they're not, so I'm going to scoot this one up just a smidge. That one's good there. Looks good. Looks good there and there. And then I know that this is going to be where I drill my other holes for my belt crank. I should be able to line these holes up exactly, and they do line up, it looks like. Looks pretty good there. Pretty good on the other side. As long as I feel confident with that, I can go ahead and punch this down. right in the middle, as close to that line as I can get. Okay, that's where I'm going to drill my 4 holes to be able to put in my bell crank assembly here. Now the hope here is that this will fit. Fingers crossed. Looks like it's going to. Alright, bell crank fits where it's supposed to, and I am happy with that. Try to get this in the camera so you can see what I'm working on here, but trying to get these 4 clecos in place into the bell crank below. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is put on a long drill bit so I can drill around. Put it down inside of these holes here without damaging this with the drill head here. Alright, and there's kind of the assembly. That's how it's supposed to look when it's done. Okay, now that we have all these holes drilled, I'm just going to go ahead and drill up these holes to a number 30. I also happen to have a longer number 30 drill bit here, which I'm going to use for these ones on the insides here. Alright, so I've gotten to the point where I need to drill through this block here for the bell crank, but I don't want those shavings to fall and hit the bearings here. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of tape around this bearing just to keep it blocked, to try and stop that from happening as much as possible. Well, looks like I kept it mostly out of there. Alright, so I have two things I need to do with this. This was originally right here. First thing I need to do is make the bend a slightly tighter so that it conforms more with this slightly beveled edge here on the rib. At 90 degrees, it's obviously just not going to line up properly. So I need to make the bend slightly more. It looks like maybe instead of 90 degrees, maybe make it 95 or something like that. And then secondly, I need to clip from where this line is across the top of this hole here, closest to this direction. And then make kind of a straight line going across there. Alright, slightly longer bend, and it is now in line. So next I'm just going to go ahead and mark and trim this bracket here. So my line needs to go right from this corner right here, and then just across the top of this hole here. That looks pretty good. Alright, looks about perfect. Just marking these with an A to match up where it goes on here. I'll be B, C, and D as well. I had a viewer make a comment on one of my videos recently, and he suggested using a powered screwdriver to do the deburring, and to get it just a cheap Harbor Freight one. I actually picked this one up at Home Depot. It's a Ryobi. I think it was 25 bucks or something like that. But they didn't really have very good deburring tools, so I did go to Harbor Freight to get the deburring tools. This is the one that I picked up here. It came in a pack of 3. So if you look closely at this, it's a single flute. It has just a hole kind of drilled through it at an angle, and that has a sharp edge on either side of that hole. And so I'm going to give this a whirl and see how it goes. I haven't done this yet. Hopefully this works out pretty well. With the wings, you've got a lot of holes to deburr, and you know, doing one of these maneuvers over and over and over could get your arm pretty tired. So I'll give this a shot on a small piece like this that I'm working on now, just to see how it goes. If something goes wrong here, I can make some of those little angle pieces again without really any issue. So we'll see how this goes. That seemed to have worked okay. I guess we'll keep on working on the part here, see how it goes. Came with a couple different sizes, so I'm going to try a different, slightly larger one, see if it works any better or any worse. Yeah, so the medium-sized one seems to cut a little bit faster, so you just got to be a little more careful with it. There is actually another size larger. I'm not going to use this one. It looks like it'll probably dig pretty deep, and I don't really want to do that. Alright, so this tool's not going to get up inside of the crevice here, so I'm going to have to get out my regular old handheld one. Just give it one of these. Alright, well that wraps this one up. As I was looking back through the part, I noticed that there were two small errors that I made. In one case, I accidentally put a CCP-44 rivet into a hole that was supposed to be filled with a CCP-41. In this case, it looks fine to me. It pulled straight. I feel like if I go and change this, it's going to cause more problems than it's worth, so I'm actually just going to leave it as it is. In the other case, I accidentally put one rivet in reverse from what the instructions said through the Bellcrank assembly. I don't see where it's going to cause any issues either, so I'm actually going to leave this in place as well. I feel like if I try to go in and repair either of these two, I'm probably going to end up doing more damage than it's worth. I really don't see any issues with either of these rivets in the place they're in. And I could see a lot of issues if I tried to fix it. So if you're still here with me, thanks for hanging out for a little bit. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I had a bunch of vacation time I had to burn up by the end of the year, so I've taken the last 2 weeks of the year off, and I'll be working on one of my wings. My goal is to complete one of them from start to finish. So we'll see how close I get to that. I will continue to post videos and hopefully have a wing pretty soon. We'll talk to you the next time.